The Galactic Dominion had ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. No species had ever defied them. No planet had ever survived their wrath. To challenge them was to invite destruction. And yet today, a new enemy stood in their path. Humans. A species so insignificant that they had been ignored for centuries. The Dominion had observed them from afar, noting their primitive wars and chaotic civilizations. They had assumed humanity would either destroy itself or remain too weak to matter. But something had changed. Reports had come in, disturbing reports. Human colonies had expanded too fast. Their technology had advanced in ways that should have been impossible. And then, the worst news arrived. A Dominion outpost on the edge of human space had gone silent. No distress signal. No survivors. Just silence. The High Council of the Dominion gathered in their grand chamber, a circular room filled with towering figures, each representing a different ruling house of the Empire. At the center stood Supreme Warlord Cyros, his golden armor gleaming under the cold artificial lights. "They are growing too fast," one of the council members said. "Their presence threatens our control." "Annihilate them," another growled. "We cannot allow them to rise." Cyros raised a clawed hand. The chamber fell silent. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he spoke. "This is not a debate. Humanity has crossed a line. They have attacked our outpost. They have killed our people. And now, they will learn what it means to stand against the Dominion." The room filled with murmurs of agreement. The decision was made. Cyros turned to his fleet commander. "Send the Armada. No negotiations. No warnings. Earth will burn." The arrival. 12 massive warships exited hyperspace near Earth. They were black behemoths, each the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that had shattered entire civilizations before. Commander Vazir stood on the bridge of the Doomfang, watching the blue planet below. He sneered. "This is the legendary Earth," he muttered. "A child's playground." The fleet moved into position, weapons locking onto key locations across the planet. Vazir opened a channel, broadcasting a message to the humans. "This is Commander Vazir of the Galactic Dominion. Your time has ended. Surrender now, and your extinction will be painless." Silence. Vazir chuckled. "Typical." He turned to his officers. "Begin orbital bombard." Suddenly, every screen on the bridge went black. A cold chill ran through the command crew. Warnings flashed as the ship's AI refused to respond. Weapons shut down. Engines flickered. "What is happening?" Vazir demanded. An officer frantically worked the controls. "Sir, we've lost all communications." And he swallowed hard. "Our fleet, it's not moving." Vazir's fists clenched. Impossible. The planet below remained silent. No human response. No counterattack. And yet, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was now helpless in orbit. Then the screens flickered back to life. But instead of Dominion symbols, a message appeared. "You should have stayed away." Vazir felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Commander Vazir stood frozen, his claws tightening around the metal railing of the Doomfang's command deck. The screens flickered, the eerie message still glowing in bold white letters. "You should have stayed away." A low hum filled the ship, not the usual sound of the engines, but something unnatural, like a whisper in the dark. The crew scrambled at their consoles, trying to regain control, but the ship refused to obey. "Sir, we've lost main power," an officer reported, his voice shaking. "Weapons are offline. Engines unresponsive." Vazir snarled. "What about the other ships?" The officer hesitated, then checked the fleet status. His eyes widened. "All of them, sir. Every warship in our fleet. Dead in space." A chilling silence spread through the bridge. The most advanced fleet in the galaxy had been reduced to floating scrap without a single shot being fired. Vazir clenched his fists. "This is impossible." Then the lights flickered. The screens glowed red, and the whispering grew louder. The landing. With their ships disabled, there was only one option left: send troops to the surface. Vazir ordered an emergency deployment. 10,000 of the Dominion's finest soldiers were sent down in drop pods, their mission clear: find the humans, crush their defenses, take control of their technology. As the pods breached Earth's atmosphere, the soldiers braced for battle. They expected anti-aircraft fire, laser turrets, missiles, anything a desperate species would throw at an invading force. But there was nothing. The pods landed in the middle of massive cities, silent, abandoned cities. No resistance, no movement. The streets were empty. Buildings stood intact, yet lifeless. No civilians, no soldiers, no defenses. It was as if the entire planet had vanished. A squad of Dominion soldiers moved cautiously through the streets. Their leader, Captain Raxer, scanned the area with his visor. Heat signatures? None. Life signs? None. This doesn't make sense, one soldier muttered. Stay sharp, Raxer ordered. They're hiding. The squad spread out, checking buildings and alleyways. The silence was suffocating. The only sound was their own footsteps echoing against the concrete. Then one soldier screamed. The squad turned. His signal had vanished from the radar. His rifle lay on the ground, still humming with power, but he was gone. No blood, no body, no sign of struggle. Raxer's grip on his weapon tightened. Report. Where is he? No answer. Then another scream. Another soldier disappeared. Panic spread. Where are they? Raxer switched to thermal vision. His blood ran cold. Figures moved in the darkness, too fast to track, too silent to be normal. They were not alone. The nightmare begins. The soldiers formed a defensive circle, weapons aimed in every direction. Come out and fight. Raxer growled. A deep chuckle echoed through the streets. It came from everywhere. A voice, calm and cold, spoke through their comms. You invaded our world. Now, you are the hunted. Suddenly, the streetlights shut off. The city was plunged into complete darkness. Raxer's heart pounded. He had fought in hundreds of wars, crushed countless species, but he had never felt this kind of fear. They were not the predators here. They were the prey. Raxer's breathing was steady, but his claws tightened around his rifle. The city was pitch black, the silence stretching on like a predator waiting to pounce. Something was out there. His squad stood back to back, forming a defensive circle. The Dominion soldiers were trained killers, elite warriors who had conquered countless worlds. But this was different. A soldier next to him muttered, "Sir, I don't like this." Raxer didn't either. He activated his visor's infrared mode. His blood ran cold. Dozens of figures moved in the shadows. They were fast, unnaturally fast. Blurred shapes darting between buildings, circling them, watching them. Then something even worse. His squad's weapons shut off. The energy rifles, the grenades, even the armor systems, all dead. A cold voice echoed through their comms. You came with weapons. Now, you have none. Raxer growled, forcing his fear down. Who are you? Silence. Then one of his men vanished. No scream, no struggle, just gone. Hold your formation. Raxer barked, but another soldier disappeared. And another. The Dominion warriors were being plucked from existence like insects in the night. Something laughed in the darkness. The first contact. Raxer had had enough. He switched to emergency night vision. A red glow illuminated the surroundings, and he finally saw them. Humans. Not soldiers. Not armored warriors. Just humans, but something was very, very wrong. Their eyes gleamed in the dark. They moved without sound, and they were smiling. Not in amusement, in anticipation. Raxer raised his weapon, but before he could react, one of the humans appeared right in front of him, faster than his visor could track. A hand gripped his throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. How? The human was smaller, weaker. He should not be this strong. The grip tightened. Raxor struggled, but it was useless. Then the human spoke. "You invaded the wrong planet." Raxor gasped for air. "What are you?" The human leaned in close, eyes burning with something terrifying. "We are the monsters you thought didn't exist." Then everything went dark. On board the Doomfang, Vazir sat in his command chair, waiting for updates. Hours had passed. No word from the ground troops, no signals. The fleet was still dead in space. His second-in-command approached, nervous. "Sir, we should consider retreating." Vazir glared at him. "Retreat? Against a primitive species?" The officer swallowed. "Sir, I don't think they're primitive." Then a new transmission came through. A video feed. The bridge crew gathered around as the screen flickered to life. It showed Raxor, bound, bruised, and very much alive. Behind him stood humans, their faces calm. One of them stepped forward. A woman, her eyes sharp like a predator's. She smiled, not with warmth, with certainty. "This is your only warning," she said, her voice like ice. "Leave our system. Never return." Vazir bared his fangs. "Or what?" The woman leaned in closer to the camera. "Or we'll do to your empire what we did to your fleet." The feed cut. For the first time in his life, Vazir felt true, paralyzing fear. Vazir's claws dug into the armrests of his command chair. His blood boiled with rage, but beneath that, a feeling he had never experienced before crept in. Fear. The human woman's words echoed in his mind. "Or we'll do to your empire what we did to your fleet." What had they done? How? The Dominion's warships were the pinnacle of galactic warfare. No species had ever crippled them without firing a single shot. And yet, here they were, stranded, powerless, with their soldiers missing. Not dead. Missing. Not a single body had been recovered. No distress calls. Just silence. The bridge crew stood frozen, waiting for orders. Vazir's second-in-command, Sarnak, cleared his throat hesitantly. "Sir, what are your orders?" His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. He had seen the same transmission. He had seen Raxor, the best ground commander in the Dominion, bound and humiliated. Vazir snarled, pushing aside his doubts. "We send another wave. Double the forces. Arm them with pulse disruptors. No more games. We burn this world to ash." Sarnak hesitated. "Sir, we still have no readings on what's attacking our men. If we..." Vazir slammed his fist against the control panel. "If we retreat, the Dominion will see us as weak." "We are not weak. We do not surrender to a primitive species." His voice echoed across the silent bridge. But no one responded. They all felt it. The shift in the air, the weight of an unseen presence pressing down on them. Something was watching them. A sudden alert blared across the ship. The red emergency lights flashed, casting eerie shadows. A technician's voice trembled as he read the report. "Sir, we're detecting multiple life signatures." Vazir frowned. "Our soldiers." The technician swallowed hard. "No, sir. They're on our ship." Silence. Then the lights flickered off. The bridge was plunged into total darkness. A few seconds passed before the emergency backup lights activated, bathing the room in a dim, pulsing red glow. The crew scrambled to their stations, scanning for intruders. Weapons were drawn, claws flexed, fangs bared. But there was nothing. Just the steady hum of the ship and the cold realization that they were no longer alone. A scream shattered the silence. A guard near the door convulsed and collapsed, his body hitting the floor with a sickening thud. His eyes were wide, his throat slit so cleanly that no one had even seen the attack. Gasps filled the bridge as another soldier was dragged into the shadows by something unseen. Vazir spun, claws raised, but his instincts screamed at him, "Run." He ignored them, stepping forward. "Show yourselves, cowards." His voice was a desperate snarl, his pride refusing to crumble. A soft click echoed through the room. The massive screen at the front of the bridge flickered back to life. A video feed appeared. It was inside their ship. The image showed the lower decks now completely overtaken. Shadows moved, too fast for the cameras to track. Then the screen zoomed in on a single figure standing in the center of the carnage. A human. He wasn't armored. He wore simple dark clothing, his stance relaxed, confident. His hands were stained with something dark. Blood. He tilted his head slightly, as if looking directly at Vazur through the screen. Then he smiled. Vazur's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a smile of arrogance. It wasn't even a smile of cruelty. It was something worse. It was the smile of a predator who had already won. The human raised a single finger to his lips, a universal gesture. Shay. The screen cut to black. Then, the screaming truly began. The countdown ticked down. 2:59, 2:58, 2:57. The bridge was dead silent except for the beeping of the self-destruct sequence. Vazur stared at the flashing red numbers, his mind struggling to process the sheer finality of it. His fleet, the pride of the Dominion, was seconds away from ceasing to exist. Sarnak's claws gripped the console, his breathing ragged. "Sir, we have to shut it down." Vazur snapped back to reality. "Override the sequence." His voice was sharp, commanding. His officers scrambled to their stations, tapping furiously at their consoles. But the screens only flashed the same mocking message. "Access is denied." A cold voice came through the speakers again. "It's adorable that you think you still have control." Vazur's fists clenched. "You think this is over, human?" The voice chuckled. "Oh, this isn't over. This is just the beginning." 2:30, 2:29, 2:28. A new alert flashed on the main screen. Unauthorized launch detected. Sarnak's voice cracked. "Sir, something just left the ship." Vazur's eyes darted to the tactical display. A single escape pod was ejecting from the flagship, hurtling toward the void. At first, it seemed unimportant. Then the sensors locked onto it. A distress beacon. A human distress beacon. Vazur's blood ran cold. "They're broadcasting a signal." Sarnak's claws trembled over the controls. But why? The speakers crackled again. "Oh, don't worry. We're not asking for help." 2:00, 1:59, 1:58. The tactical display flickered as a new fleet appeared on the radar. An enormous fleet, ships larger than any in the Dominion's records, dark and angular, with hulls designed for deep space combat. Their energy signatures were off the charts. Then the transmission came through. A new human voice, calm and authoritative. "Dominion Fleet, this is Admiral Pierce of the Terran Defense Force. We received your invasion signal loud and clear. It's our turn now." Vazur's claws dug into his armrests. His breathing was shallow. This had been a trap. They hadn't just been fighting humans. They had been bait. Sarnak's voice barely held together. "Sir, we need tow." 1:30, 1:29, 1:28. Another screen flickered to life. Live footage from the Dominion's other ships. Their captains, once confident, now frozen in terror, as their own weapons turned on them. One by one, Dominion battleships locked onto their own allies. One by one, their shields collapsed. One by one, the humans fired. Vazur's vision blurred as the first explosions lit up the void. Massive Dominion warships, each capable of leveling planets, detonated like fireworks. The unstoppable Dominion fleet was being dismantled, ship by ship. The Terran admiral's voice remained calm. "We gave you a chance. You invaded anyway. Now we make sure you never do it again." Vazur's chest heaved, his vision tunneling as the countdown reached its final moments. 0:10, 0:09, 0:08. His empire, his legacy, gone. The last thing he saw before the flagship erupted into fire was that same human's face on the screen. smiling. The Dominion homeworld was in chaos. Sirens blared across the capital as defense systems scrambled to respond. Civilians flooded the streets, their eyes locked onto the sky, where fire rained down. The fleet was gone. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through sheer military might, its armada unmatched. Now, that armada was nothing but debris, floating in the void. The humans hadn't just defeated them, they had annihilated them. In the High Command War Chamber, the Dominion's most powerful leaders stood frozen. Holograms of their shattered fleet flickered across the room, displaying ship after ship destroyed, each marked as lost. The room, once filled with arrogance and authority, was now drowning in silence. Then, the chamber doors burst open. A messenger, panting, his scales slick with fear, stumbled in. "Lords, we." The Supreme Chancellor's voice was barely above a whisper. "Say it." The messenger swallowed hard. "The humans, they've arrived." A single trembling claw reached out to the main control panel. The Dominion's planetary sensors zoomed in on their world's outer orbit. And there they were, the Terran fleet. It wasn't just a fleet. It was an armada larger than anything the Dominion had ever seen. Hundreds of dark, angular warships, their hulls absorbing the light, forming a void in space itself. And then, something worse. A single transmission came through. No demands, no declarations, no mercy. Just coordinates. The Supreme Chancellor's eyes widened in horror. They were targeting the capital. A new screen flashed red. A countdown. The same countdown the Dominion fleet had seen before their destruction. The humans had just given them 3 minutes to live. Panic erupted in the war chamber. Lords screamed over each other, demanding a response, a counterstrike, a miracle. But deep down, they all knew the truth. There was no escape. The Supreme Chancellor's claws trembled as he stared at the countdown. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had crushed countless civilizations beneath their heel. But today, they were the prey. And the humans had come to finish the hunt. 3 o'clock, 2:59, 2:58. The countdown continued. 2:57, 2:56, 2:55. The Dominion's high command had never known fear like this. Entire empires had fallen before them. Their fleet had never lost a battle, until now. And now, they weren't just losing, they were dying. The Supreme Chancellor's claws dug into his throne. His voice, once filled with command and power, now trembled. "Open communications. Get me the human admiral." The comms officer hesitated, his scales pale. "Sir," they refused to respond. The Chancellor's blood ran cold. The humans weren't here to negotiate. They were here to end them. 2:30, 2:29, 2:28. The skies above the Dominion capital darkened, not from clouds but from descending warships. The Terran fleet loomed overhead, their weapons glowing with energy. Then the first strike hit. A massive beam of pure destruction ripped through the upper city. Towers crumbled like sand. Streets melted into slag. The shockwave alone flattened districts in seconds. Screams filled the air. Panic consumed the people. The unstoppable Dominion was burning. The Supreme Chancellor staggered to his feet. "Launch our defense fleet. Target their warships." The generals didn't move. A new hologram flickered to life. The Dominion's defense fleet, 1,000 warships, was already engaged. But the battle was over before it began. Terran ships weaved through the Dominion's formations with impossible precision. Their weapons struck with pinpoint accuracy, detonating Dominion battleships one by one. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. 1:30, 1:29, 1:28. The Supreme Chancellor's breathing was ragged. This isn't possible." Then, for the first time since the invasion began, the human spoke. A cold, mechanical voice echoed across every screen, every speaker, every radio on the planet. "Your time is up. The Dominion's last defense systems failed. The final strike began. From orbit, the Terran fleet fired. Massive orbital bombardments rained down. Entire cities turned to fire. Land masses cracked. The oceans boiled. And in the war chamber, the Supreme Chancellor watched as the countdown hit 0, 03, 02, 01. The last thing he saw was light. Then, the Dominion was no more.